Hey everybody, I hope you enjoyed my other videos for Dungeon Saga, my quick overview, my sample gameplay, and my how to play video. In this final, and I emphasize final video for Dungeon Saga, I'm just going to give you my final opinions for the game. Now this video itself is a little bit late because every time I've tried to shoot this video, I've pretty much gone off on a little bit of a tirade and I pretty much have been unhappy with the video and I pretty much tossed it and I've decided to start all over again. So hopefully I get through this video this time without going off on a tirade. And if I do, we're going with it. I don't care anymore. This is going to be my final review for Dungeon Saga. Dungeon Saga, or as I like to refer to it as Hero Quest, the Jenny Craig edition, was supposed to be a dungeon crawling game that is going to be a pretty much an evolution of the classic Hero Quest game. It's basically your way of playing a dungeon crawler, much in the way of the classic Hero Quest, where you're going to have a group of heroes going against an overlord through a campaign trying to get to the final baddie and defeat the final baddie. The unfortunate thing is that with Dungeon Saga, they skimped and saved and cut as many corners as they could, and basically what we have now is nowhere near what at least I and many other people probably feel like we were promised. Now, we can't go ahead and harp on the Kickstarter backers. You pretty much are stuck with what you got if you're a Kickstarter backer, assuming that you've gotten everything that you paid for when you backed the game. Because if you look over the Kickstarter comments, there's a lot of people who still do not have a lot of their items. But ignoring that fact, let's just take Kickstarter, throw it out of the picture completely, and let's look at Dungeon Saga as a retail release. Now, Dungeon Saga as a retail release is $80, and for that $80 you can get your Jenny Craig Super Workout Edition miniatures. And I say Super Workout Edition miniatures because they're all super skinny, like they've gone on one heck of a diet. But you don't have to take my word for it. You can look out at these sample video images, such as images comparing it to classic Hero Quest, Descent, or other games, and you can see that they look like they cut a lot of corners and try to save as much plastic as they could to save a little bit of money, and that's not even the beginning of the corners they cut for Dungeon Saga. See, Dungeon Saga doesn't even come with a lot of missions in the game, and I'm going to complain about the missions in just a second, but I'm going to start by complaining by how few missions are even available in this retail box that you paid $80 for. In this retail box, there are 10 missions that come with the game. 10 missions. The first 2 missions of those missions are basically tutorial missions that you will never ever play ever again. The first mission is going to tell you how to do melee combat, which is as complex as move and roll some dice as you bonk something over the head, or as complex as you got to move and hit something over the head in an effort to defeat it. So the first mission you'll probably never, you're never going to play it again. The second mission teaches you how to do range combat and how to cast spells, and that mission is a little bit better, and there's actually a slim chance the Overlord can actually win the second mission as opposed to the first mission, which is basically the Overlord. You can just pray, hope you may get 1 or 2 cards. Again, you're never going to play these first 2 missions again. So basically you get 8 total missions in the box. And let's just go look back in history. The very first Hero Quest, which this game is basically emulating, and I own Hero Quest, so I'm not just trying to go look through rose-colored lenses and try to pretend that the old Hero Quest is better. But even the old Hero Quest, looking at the old Hero Quest, had 14 scenarios. I'll even turn to the right page. 14 quests. So even the original Hero Quest had more scenarios available to it, and all these scenarios had probably the amount of same replay that Dungeon Saga did. But you have almost twice as many scenarios that you have in the classic Hero Quest that Dungeon Saga comes with. And that's not the end of it here. You can go look at games such as Descent, Second edition. This game comes with 20 scenarios, and it's 20 scenarios that you're not even going to play all 20 of those scenarios, so that gives you some replay, at least in the base box. So already we're seeing that modern dungeon crawlers are already offering much more in the basic box than Dungeon Saga offers. So again, going back to the fact that you're paying $80 and there's less in the box than what you should have in this box, less that should be there, shrunk down miniatures, shrunk down quests, and we also have shrunk down rule set because this is also a very simplistic game. Now, a lot of the variety in the game is going to come from the fact that you have these Overlord cards, and these Overlord cards are going to be what's going to allow the Overlord player to cause the most challenge from the players. The unfortunate thing with these Overlord cards is that you're going to draw your hand randomly every single time you play the game. And some of these cards are going to be useless to you sometimes, and sometimes you're not going to have the cards that you really need. And the cards you really need a lot of times are going to be the interrupt cards. Now, the interrupt cards are not going to be the only cards you need. There's going to be some cards that are going to allow you to summon extra minions and add extra things to the board. but you're not going to get them at the right time you're going to need them because you're not always going to have access to all those cards. And in some scenarios, some of those cards can be pretty darn worthless, such as a scenario which doesn't have a lot of bone piles. If you end up drawing a hand of a lot of cards that are going to allow you to animate those bone piles, well, if you're going to animate 3, but there's only 1 bone pile on the board, pretty much a wasted card and a wasted opportunity, and something I think they should have fixed in Dungeon Saga. They would have given a little bit more effort into the rules. They probably would have had a drafting system where the Overlord could actually draft cards or do something better. But now I'm kind of trailing off and heading back to the tangent I don't want to do with this review video, which is saying that Dungeon Saga was a game that was almost there if it would have had another month or 2 with the rules, with the quests, and everything included to make it a better game. Instead, what we got was this rushed product sent out quickly to get out there to retail to try to make some money at the retail point of sale. And you can see that throughout everything that's involved in the game, with the miniatures that are very low quality, with a lack of quests in the game. And matter of fact, the quests don't even make a lot of sense. I mean, they say this is a leveling system where your heroes are going to be leveling up. Your heroes are going to be grabbing new extra special abilities as they level up. But it really doesn't matter how well you do in a scenario, because it doesn't matter what you do in the scenario. You're going to end up getting these things no matter what, such as the silken armor that the elven archer can get. It doesn't even matter if you find the silken armor, you still get in the next scenario. So your results in each scenario really don't matter, so you really don't even feel like you're playing a questing game. You're basically going to have everything you have at the start of every scenario, no matter how good or no matter how bad you did on the prior scenario. Nothing really matters. The only thing that matters for the heroes, finding the door. The only thing that matters for the Overlord is stalling the heroes so they run out of time, or going and picking on the wizard, because that's pretty much going to be one of the ways you're going to guarantee yourself winning as the Overlord, is picking on the wizard, who has very little defense, very little hit points, and they're very easy to take out compared to all the heroes. So basically you have a game where the heroes are trying to find the door while protecting the wizard, and the Overlord's either trying to throw gobs and gobs of monsters at the heroes to slow them down enough to either time out the game, or you're trying to hope that you get a couple lucky shots with your archers to take out the wizard to win the game. Now, not all scenarios play out like this. I want to make sure I'm being fair and not totally being cruel to Dungeon Saga by not being 100% fair with the game. Not all scenarios play out like that. Only 4 or 5 of them do. That does leave you 3 scenarios that are actually pretty decent. So there are 3 scenarios in the game that actually offer a lot more variety, a lot more cards, a lot more strategies for the Overlord player. But when you look at the fact that you're spending $80 for pretty much 3 scenarios, it's not a good dollar value, especially when you look at the quality of the miniatures, the quality and lack of the amount of quests that come in the game, and the fact that there's a lot of randomness inside the game. Now, there are a few things in Dungeon Saga that I actually did like, that I thought were very cool, and I actually want to see incorporated in other modern dungeon crawlers. I like the fact that in Dungeon Saga, much like the classic Hero Quest, players don't know what the dungeon looks like the first time they go through the dungeon. See, in games such as Descent, you're going to lay out the entire map in advance for the heroes, and they basically know what the map looks like. In Dungeon Saga, that's not the case. The players are going to explore the dungeon, and as they explore the dungeon, the map is going to be revealed to them. And I thought that was really cool, and that's something I really appreciate quite a bit. But unfortunately, that one cool thing about exploring the dungeon, making you feel like you're actually exploring a dungeon, is actually forgotten quickly by the fact that how this game is not really much of a campaign system. Now, we do have the Dungeon Companion, which I'll talk about in just a second here, which does add a lot of things to it, but also adds its own negatives, and I don't want to really cover that in a review until I actually shoot a whole video series for that, if I ever get around to it. I may do it, I may not. Depends on how many people are actually interested in seeing that. But if you're interested in that, leave comments. If you're not interested, then don't leave comments, and I'll probably never ever do it. But getting back on topic here with the game itself, I do like the fact that it did feel like I was exploring a dungeon as a player, or as an Overlord. I was having the players explore a dungeon because the dungeon was being explored as they're going through it. But that is part of the difficulty, and it's also part of the challenge of the game, which really destroys any replay the game may have. Because once the players know where the final exit is, the only real objective for the heroes is to make the biggest rush they can for the exit, race as quick as they can, throw caution to the wind, because if they bash down that final door before any of their heroes die, or before the Overlord plays that final card, they win the scenario. It doesn't matter how spread out they are, how wounded they are, or even if they found any of the treasures. It doesn't really matter. They've won the scenario. They can go back on to the next adventure. Or it doesn't matter how well they did, any experience they did, or anything. It doesn't matter. They're going to get the abilities. They're going to get all the everything. They're going to get in the next scenario. Nothing really matters. It's less of a dungeon crawl, more of a war game with extremely simplistic rules, with tactical strategies as complex as I move, put my back to the wall, and see if anything is within range. That's pretty much the tactical strategy of the game, while the Overlord is going through a deck, hoping they can get a card that they really need when they need to try to slow down the heroes, in an effort to slow them down enough to time out the scenario or manage to kill one of the heroes and win the scenario. So again, overall, Dungeon Saga, I think it was a missed opportunity. I think this is a game that's a couple house rules from being a better game. But again, if you're willing to house rule this game, well, then you probably don't need my review or my opinions here, because you're going to make the game as well as you want it or as bad as you want it by adding house rules to the game and making it a better game. Overall, I think Dungeon Saga was a missed opportunity. The components aren't that great, and I didn't even mention these clips right here, which come with the game. These clips are made of hard plastic, and the idea for these clips were for you to clip the boards together so the board doesn't lay around, which was something, I'm going to go on a little bit of a tangent because I wanted to mention this. I love the fact that the boards were not jig cut like you get with games such as such as Ascent, because you can only put those boards together a certain way. I thought it was really cool that none of these boards are jig cut, and you're supposed to connect them together with these connectors, giving you an infinite amount of different ways you can lay out the dungeons. But unfortunately, these were made of hard plastic, and every time you clip these onto the boards, they do damage to the boards because there's a tight clip, and the boards are not able to handle this. So the more you use these clips, the more you're going to damage your boards. So you're going to quickly realize you're not going to want to use these because they're not made of a soft rubber like they should have been. They're made of a hard plastic. So that's another missed opportunity, and I just wanted to make sure I mentioned that before I forget. And it was also cool that we had these cool little components right here, which added to the variety of the game. Made it feel like the classic Hero Quest, how we had these furnitures, which is very, very cool. But again, it's hard to ignore the fact that this doesn't feel like a dungeon crawler. It felt like a strategy game. Not even a strategy game. It felt like a tactical game of miniatures with very simplified rules. So simple, in fact, that my 10-year-old got bored, won't play the game again. My 7-year-old can kind of be talking to playing it. At least he was having fun once in a while playing it, until we got Arcadia Quest in the house. And now the Arcadia Quest is in the house, we're not even finishing Dungeon Saga. We got to the 5th scenario, and he really has no interest in ever going back. I play this game with adults. They played through a couple scenarios, really no interest in ever going back. So the only person I'm ever going to be playing this again with is going to be my 7-year-old. And even he felt that after we went through 5 scenarios, that's actually a total of 7 if you want to include the training scenarios, we're 5 real scenarios into the game, and he's kind of bored and really doesn't want to go back. And my 10-year-old was bored after the first scenario. When he looked at me and said, "Okay, Dad, let me make sure I got this straight. I want to advance, put my heroes back to a wall so I can't be surrounded, and thwack something nearby me." And I looked at him and said, "Yeah, that's pretty much it." And that's pretty much what I want to say about Dungeon Saga. It's pretty much it. Could have been better. It's a couple of house rules away from being a good game, but from what you get in the box, it's a very strong missed opportunity. The Dungeon Companion, just to mention it, also has its flaws. It advertises a solo campaign. It works out okay, but there's a couple issues with that. It does have a system where you can create your own adventures, create your own heroes, but there's lots of balancing issues there, and you can't even use those heroes on these pre-generated adventures because they're all balanced for the heroes that come with the game, and you're either going to totally obliterate the Overlord if you use certain heroes, or if you don't use certain heroes, certain required heroes, you can't even go through the adventures. So you can't even go back through it like that. So again, bottom line here with Dungeon Saga, it was a couple months away from being a great game from what we have right now. It's just an okay game, probably not worth your $80. I hope you enjoyed this video series for Dungeon Saga, and I hope you enjoyed this review. At least I hope it can educate you and let you decide if you think that Dungeon Saga is going to be a game for you and your gaming group. Use the information, use the tutorial video, use the sample gameplay video, and decide if this is a game for you. As for me, it's not a game for me, not a game for my gaming group. The Dungeon Adventures Companion really isn't saving the game either. This box is pretty much going to go in the trade pile. I'm going to keep fantastic games such as Descent, the classic Heroescape, and even the new Games Workshop game, which the name is escaping me at this moment, the Silver Tower game, which is actually a fantastic game. All those games are staying in my collection. Dungeon Saga's going off to the side until I see something better coming out for it, something that fixes the game, or something to improve the game. Hope you enjoyed this video series. As always, thanks for watching.